The Democrats have no leader. They remind me of Somalia, okay?
People are like, oh, they did her a favor, and all of these people are changing things for her. And it's like, no, we're just following the Constitution. This really interestingly, bizarrely scripted scene from like the House of Cards. He would no longer be president.
Here's this freshman congresswoman that no one is willing to look into. There's an electric fence around here. You cannot talk about her. But when I said to my staff, I want to really look into her and I want to see, tell me who she is, tell me where she came from, et cetera, we started uncovering things that are just beyond description strange. There are multiple suspicious stories that the media has granted her a pass, and they would never grant this pass to anyone. I mean, even the average Democrat would not get away with these things. So I want to talk to you a little bit about her and where she came from today. The first stories that started to come out to question her came out from online bloggers back in 2016. Normally, I wouldn't go to an online blogger and say, hey, look at what this online blogger did. However, when you have no media, sometimes the online bloggers, if you check them out, have something, and they have checked this out. Back in 2016, Ilhan Omar had committed immigration fraud. This was the charge, that she had committed immigration fraud by marrying her brother to facilitate his arrival in the United States. Okay, all right. If it was from a blogger, I would look into it, but it doesn't help that, it's like, okay, really? So she set her social media platforms to private immediately after that story broke, and then deleted all of the alleged evidence that was used to prove the immigration fraud case. It was all up on her social media. And as soon as that came out, delete. Okay, sounds suspicious, but the mainstream media wouldn't touch it. Not even the local Minnesota media would touch it. And you'll understand why by the end of this episode. The Associated Press actually took this on. They were the only outlet. The Associated Press, not a slum outfit, and currently not a conservative outlet, to say the least. But when they asked Omar what was going on, she just said, quote, "I choose not to further the narrative of those who oppose us," end quote. Okay, well, I assume you're saying that those are all lies, but it would be easy to prove them. So the AP asked Omar for her immigration records and birth certificates that would prove her denial. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, geez, a birth certificate thing. There was nothing with the Obama birth certificate. Can we stop with the birth certificates? And the fact that she said that her family's birth certificates were lost during the Somali Civil War, something that probably did happen and was true. So you're not going to base it on birth records. However, the immigration records, the things that should be open, you shouldn't have a problem with this at all. She refused to offer any of those up, and a Freedom of Information Act request submitted by the Associated Press was sent back explaining the approval of the release had to be authorized by Omar and her husband, and they won't sign off. Now, even Snopes, who's not really in the Donald Trump camp, classifying this not as true or false, but unproven. So let's recap. We have a credible case of immigration fraud by a U.S. representative, and the alleged perpetrator has deleted the visual evidence, refuses to provide any evidence, the person who is, under the microscope. She's gone radio silent on this issue ever since, and no one is looking into it. Okay, I mean, you'd think that someone would, at the New York Times or Washington Post at least be curious. Why wouldn't the government open a probe? The Associated Press, according to the Associated Press, the Obama administration never started an investigation, and the Trump administration hasn't started an investigation. Okay. What else you got? Well, there's also evidence that Ilhan Omar committed perjury in court. Now, this is where it starts to fall into place. When she filed for a divorce from her possible brother in 2017, Omar claimed that she hadn't seen or made contact with her husband since 2011. She said, "I don't even know where my husband is or where he was. It's possible he was somewhere in London." Well, PJ Media went to the Minnesota Family Records Center, and they verified that Omar officially submitted to the court that her last contact with her husband was June 2011. So remember this. And she said, "I haven't seen him since June 2011, and that's in her divorce records. So in the absence of any journalist doing any work on this at all, the internet sleuths had to go to work, and they searched Omar's husband's last known location, which was London, right? She said, "I haven't seen him, probably in London." So they searched to see if Omar had traveled there between 2011 and 2016. Oops. They found some photos on social media taken in London back in 2014. The picture is up on the screen now if you happen to be watching. It is taken in 2014. That's Ilhan Omar and her ex-husband or brother or whatever. So isn't that a pretty strong case for perjury? Case for law enforcement, at least to investigate, the mainstream media to do some kind of looking into this. Give credit to the Associated Press. They're the only ones that at least ask Omar about this discrepancy, and she refused to address the situation. And Omar's husband, ex-husband, has declined any kind of response either. And by the way, the pictures, yeah, they're mysteriously been deleted. Now, there's one other thing. Omar has been accused by State Representative Steve Drazkowski of not one, but 3 campaign finance and ethics violations. The first allegation involves the use of $3,000 in campaign money that was spent on travel to Estonia and Boston. Now, Drazkowski claims that these trips were personal in nature. And her response? It should be concerning to his constituents that he's using taxpayer dollars to harass a Muslim candidate. So in other words, her defense is, "I'm a Muslim." The second allegation is that Omar used over $2,000 in campaign finance to pay her lawyer for her divorce proceedings. Omar's response was basically, no, it was for something else. And no other explanation has been given. The third allegation is that she made ethics violations after accepting speaker fees from public colleges. Omar would later pay that money back, but no apology? No, instead we got this. We recognize how these folks are deeply invested in stopping a progressive, black, Muslim, hijab-wearing immigrant woman. Boy, intersectionality is working for her.
If you'll remember, in the first set of 50 indictees here in the state of Minnesota, $250 million was swiped and stolen from the people of Minnesota. It was supposed to be intended to feed kids. Nearly not a dime of it was spent on kids, but instead spent on things like luxury automobiles, spent on vacation homes, spent on jewelry, spent on real estate, some of it in other countries. And this was spent by the people who defrauded you and I. So what we learned yesterday actually showed some new categories. We learned that the money was used to purchase and have delivered an aircraft to another continent. In addition to that, some of the money was used to buy a laundromat to launder the money from the fraud. These are the types of things that we learned yesterday. Now, if you add it up, we're over $300 million of your money pulled out from your wallets and taken by people, while, by the way, being handled by the Minnesota Department of Education. The Minnesota Department of Education, the department that is supposed to have a fiduciary responsibility for our money, that is supposed to report according to the law. There are two different places in the law that requires the department, when they detect fraud, to report it to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. Neither one of those statutes were followed. The Legislative Auditor didn't find out until we did. And at the same time, the government acknowledges they knew about this fraud before. By the way, there's criminal statutes in place that say if a state government agency gives out money after they know there's fraud, they are criminally liable. It's in statute. No one yet in the Minnesota Department of Education has even been arrested or interviewed as far as we know. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison are sitting on their hands while Minnesota continues to get fleeced. Okay, so this is really bad stuff. So what can you do? I've been chasing down this fraud for the last year or more and continue to let people know about what's going on. What you can do is this. There are a number of legislators, many legislators in our state who are doing nothing. A large number of them are in communities that this fraud is going on in. Minneapolis, St. Paul, we heard Faribault, Eagan, and other communities in our state are areas where people who are committing this fraud are living. There are more of them. Wherever your legislator lives, contact them and let them know it is their job, it is my job, it is your job, it is all of our jobs to combat this fraud and hold people accountable. This is the people's money. It is our joint fiduciary responsibility to make sure we do our job. Please contact your legislator. We need more help in this fight so that we can get to the bottom of it and stop this waste of your money.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.